In this demonstration, you're going to learn how to do a join in ArcGIS Pro. To make things a little bit easier, I've already added some layers here, including street center lines, parcels, and city limits. Of course, we have our base map, and then I've also added a standalone table called owners. What I'm going to do here is we're first going to examine the attribute table for parcels, and then we'll take a look at the owners table as well. The idea here is that we've got a parcel data set that contains information about the parcels. However, it doesn't include ownership information. The ownership information does exist in this standalone table, and so the idea is that we want to join the information in the owners table to the parcels table so that we can then be able to see the ownership information for the parcels, which we don't currently have. So we'll open the attribute table for parcels. And you can see we have a number of different fields here. Real key, there's a pin, owner key, number of acres, but not a whole lot of information here, and definitely not any sort of ownership information that's attached to the data. Now if we look at the standalone table called owners, now you'll notice that we have ownership information. Last name, first name, middle name, address, city, state, zip. So we've got some ownership information. And so the idea here is that we would like to join this ownership information to our parcels. Now, just so we can kind of see this information side by side, make this a little bit larger. All right, so now we can see both tables side by side. And you'll notice right off the bat that the parcels attribute table has an owner key column. The owners table has an own key column. Right? They're not named exactly the same, but it sounds like they may be similar, right? So the next thing we want to do here is to take a look at the columns, those two columns, to make sure that they look like they'll be a good match. So I'm going to sort the parcels owner key column in descending order, and I'll do the same thing with the owner table. And we'll just kind of take a look at the data. So we're kind of scrolling through the parcel data. You'll notice that, of course, we have numeric IDs for owner key. If you look at the owners table, same type of thing here, right? So it looks like there's a good match between those two columns. The other thing that you have to check before you do the join is to make sure that those two columns that you're joining are of the same data type, right? So they're both text, they're both numbers, both of them, they need to be the same, right? You don't want one to be numeric, the other to be text. You want them to be the same. Now there's an easy way to tell that just by looking at your table in ArcGIS Pro. If you look at the owner key column, you'll notice that it's right justified. And by right justified, we mean that it goes butts against the right side of the column. Whereas if you look at the pin column, it's left justified, right? It butts up against the left side of that column. So it's anytime you have a right justified set of data for a column, you know it's numeric. That's just kind of how that's represented in ArcGIS Pro. Now, if we look at the owners table and we look at own key, you'll see it's also right justified. So we know right off the bat that that's also a numeric column. So not only do these two columns appear to contain the same type of data, but they are also the same data type. And so that's going to make them a good fit to be joined together. Now, the next thing you need to determine is the cardinality. What is the relationship between these two tables? Now, if we look at, just kind of scan real quickly through the parcel table, you'll notice that some of these numbers for the owner key are repeated, indicating to me that one owner owns multiple parcels. Now, if we look at the owners table, kind of scan through here, you can see, or at least it appears, that there is only one unique ID for each of the last names. All right, so what that means is effectively we have a many to one relationship. So many parcels to one owner. All right, so because of that, because there's a many to one, or if you had a one to one, that automatically tells you that you're going to do a join instead of a relate. So in this case, because we have a many to one relationship, we know to do a join. So I'm going to go ahead and close these two tables now and go ahead and perform the join. To perform the join, you can do it several ways, but the easiest way is to right-click on the target table or feature class in this case, and then go to Joins and Relates. Select Add Join, and then you'll put in the input information. The input table is already filled out because you right-click Parcels. Here you'll want to select the owner key column, and then your join table again. It'll kind of think for you a little bit, right? It automatically knew to pick up the owner's table and it automatically found own key. It won't always do that correctly, so you always want to verify that you have the correct tables and the correct columns. All right, so go ahead and do the join. And if we examine the join now, okay, so at this point we've done our join, and we want to examine the results of the join. So we can open up the attribute table again for parcels. And now as we kind of scan through the column, you'll notice that we picked up ownership information. So there's your last name, first name, address information. All that information came directly from the owner table. Now it appears that this is one single table, but this is actually a virtual join, meaning that it's not a permanent type relationship. So in other words, in the geodatabase, this relationship has not been made permanent. They're still separate tables. It just looks like they have been, well, they have been joined together, but they've been virtually joined together, so it's not a permanent relationship. Now, if we look at the field view, you can see by scrolling through the field view, it'll tell you where these columns come from. So as you kind of start scrolling down here, you'll notice that some of these field names are prefixed with the name owners, right? And so that's telling you that that particular field is coming from that owners table. All right, so that can give you more information, more insight to where those columns are coming from by using that field view. Now, again, this is a virtual relationship. It's not permanent. If you wanted to make this a permanent relationship, you could do so. One way of doing this would be to export your feature class. So if I right-clicked and then go to Data, Export Features, what this would do is it would allow me to export a copy of this parcel feature class, and in doing so, all of those joined columns are going to follow along with that new feature class. Now, there's other more advanced ways of doing things like joins, right? In fact, you could do things like relationship classes, which are more permanent types of joins that are then made permanent as a structure in the geodatabase. That's kind of beyond the scope of what we're doing in this demonstration. For now, we're just kind of wanting to show you how you go about performing the join, also some of the considerations that you need to think about before you do a join so that you ensure that all the data is populated in the way that you think it's going to populate. All right, so that's it for now. Thank you for joining me.